Hi and welcome to Bite-Sized Bat Reps, where we bring you great battle reports without taking up a great deal of your time. So we're back with the narrative battle, the Battle of Kobograd, and this is game number 3, so if you haven't seen games 1 and 2, then you can check out the links above. And just to paint the big picture again, so this is the Swedish division under General Horn meeting Nalbe's Tatars around the town of Kobograd. In the first two games, the middle of the board and the Pontar Hill have been decided, and now the only remaining strategic objective to skirmish about is the town of Kobograd on the left side of the field, where Colonel Rappe will lead the Swedes on an attack that will be matched by Cossack allies under Colonel Platov, sent by the Tatars. Seeing how it's all about fighting in a small town, it makes sense that the Tatars are sending their infantry allies to contest the Swedes. Let's get going with Scenario 3, Attack on a Village of Kobograd. Okay, so for this game I decided to use the detachment build of the Swedes with 2 guns, maximum musketeers, dragoons, and rapiers in support, which is a nice representation of the infantry regiment part of the division. And the Cossacks under Colonel Platov are bringing a fairly standard Cossack build with lots of Sotnas, Register Malotsi, Register Veterans, 3 cavalry, 2 wagons, and the Scouts. And the Swedes have a 1-point disadvantage. We roll for the effect and end up with Panic, which is one of the better effects to get, so the Swedes are off to a good start. Then for reconnaissance, the Cossacks actually had 8 points of recon, but they decided to use their special rule, and so for 6 reconnaissance points they moved one of the terrain elements. The Swedish forces with their 2 guns, dragoons, and national rapiers. And the one thing to notice about this force as opposed to the other Swedish build is that there are no veterans here. This is all regular troops. So everyone's fighting on 4s except the guns, which still shoot on 5s. And the Cossacks, with their wagons in the center, Colonel Platov top right, the Malotsi on the right side, the Register Malotsi on the right side, Malotsi on the left, and veterans top left in the light blue. And of course the Platstuni Scouts, which are leading the force, and you can notice that the Scouts have brought their own fence that they seem to be taking around with them everywhere they go. I guess that's what makes them hard to spot. The town of Kobograd in the center with 3 buildings that we'll be fighting over, and our initial deployment. And so for the Swedish plan, it's really simple. The slow units, the infantry is pushing up the center straight into the town. The rapiers are providing covers on both flanks, and the cannons have been set up left and right of the town to also provide covering fire as the Cossacks will be advancing around the town. And here's a closer look at our vanguarding units. The Swedes got to deploy the musketeers first, position them so that they cut off the Cossacks a little bit from the town, and the Cossacks put their mounted unit as its vanguard, setting it up for possibly for an early charge. Close up of Colonel Platov surrounded by his Cossack infantry. And the Swedish line with Colonel Rappe standing behind the guns, eyeing the town. Alright, continuing setup. So the Swedes had quite a bit of reconnaissance this time around, so they decided to do forced march on 2 of their units. The Musketeers and Dragoons push further towards Kobograd, so now the town has a couple of the Swedish units right outside of it. And the Swedes are just about to march into the town. And let's get going with turn 1. So the last thing that has to happen before we get going is the panic effect, and we roll it, and the Cossacks end up with their mounted unit getting panicked, the one that was in the vanguard, which is really bad for them because now they're really far away from the town, and so they're not off to a good start. And I also had enough reconnaissance points to split up the large Register Malotsi unit on the left, as you can see. So now that big group of Cossacks is 2 smaller units, which makes them a little bit easier to handle and more difficult to command. So it makes the Swedes' jobs that much easier. Musketeers looking at the Cossacks trying to get into Kobograd. Okay, moves for turn 1. Swedes go first, and the Raiders push up the flanks as planned. Infantry occupies the 2 forward buildings in Kobograd, and the Dragoons dismount, getting ready to get into the town. So turn 1, before the Cossacks even move, the Swedes are already occupying 2 buildings and about to get into the 3rd, so they're off to a really good start early on in the scenario. Colonel Rappe is pleased. The Cossacks in their first turn move up as quickly as they can, which is not very quickly because they can't really be marching. The wagons are rolling up on the left with the case shot gun, getting ready to shoot the Swedes in the town. End of turn 1 looks like this, and at the end the Plastuni scouts are springing their ambush, showing up on the right side, and because it's only 2 bases, they don't cause any panics, so they just kind of show up on the Swedish flank, and Colonel Rappe is basically ignoring them for now. Turn 2, so the first thing the Swedes do is get into that building with their dragoons, and now occupy all 3 buildings, and the Reiters push up the sides a little bit just to set up future charges, but it's too early to go now, so it's a little bit of a waiting game. In response, the Cossacks move up again, full move as quickly as they can, and the veterans in the middle are now expanding their frontage because they want to be shooting up those Swedes and getting ready to combat. Close up on the Cossacks, starting to siege Kobograd. And on the far right, the Molodsi, in their very interesting formation. So if you haven't played against the Cossacks, I don't know if you've seen this before, but they have the spearmen in the back with the fire-armed Cossacks in the front, skirmishing. And turn 2 shooting is quite eventful, a lot of firing, but not that much happens in terms of casualties, so the wagon takes a hit from the guns, and the Swedes and the Cossacks exchange a couple of wounds right outside of Kobograd. Turn 3, so this is where all of the action happens. The Swedes go first, and both Reiter blocks declare charges. The Cossacks are now right in the open, and this is the perfect time for the cavalry to strike. And for their part, the Cossacks realize that time is running out. They must get into the city, so they order 8 Cossack bases to charge onto that one building defended by 3 Swedish musketeer stands. Raiders move up, and on the left, actually, it's pretty funny. This is one of those little gaming mechanics mistakes. I actually thought that my Raiders could narrow their frontage to not get into that forest area or the light woods and make their charge, but of course you can't, so they end up just riding forward and getting stuck in the light woods, so that charge doesn't really get very far. And the Cossacks respond with their moves. So on the left, that large formation of the Register Molodsi is charging my Raitiers, which is actually making me happy because that means we'll get into combat, so I'll still get what I want, and my Raitiers won't be testing for panic or for disorganization. And on the right side, the Raitiers are about to smash into the Cossack infantry. But because of their formation, those musket-armed Cossacks will run behind their spearmen, and the Raitiers will be fighting spears. It's a good thing they're not defending. Back to the left, and Kobograd, about to get sieged by the Cossacks. So, first, defending fire, and the Swedes actually do really well. They take away 1 base on the left, but the Cossacks pass their morale test and keep coming, heedless of their losses. And on the right side, the veterans, they actually mistimed their charge, and they were a little bit too far from the target, just the way the bases worked out. So they run up, fail their skill test, get confused by the fire and the distance, and then withdraw with disorganization. So they don't make it into combat. But on the left side, the Cossacks easily make it into combat with my Raitiers. And the right side, completing that charge straight into the spears. We fight the combat on the right side first, and I end up whiffing most of my rolls, and my opponent scores a couple of hits as well, and with his numerical superiority, we end up tying, and I just bounce. So that wasn't too exciting. On the right side, however, the Swedes do much better. They cause enough hits to take away a base. The Cossacks fail their test, they get disorganized and get pushed back. And the building combat, for all their bravery charging into the fire and attacking the Swedes, the Cossacks just were not numerous enough to cause enough hits, and they lose combat and also withdraw, but they do maintain their formation. And here's end of turn 3, and you can see that those Plastuni on the right side are sneaking around the flank, and Colonel Rapp is still not too worried about them. Perhaps he should be. Turn 4. So, big news is that the Cossack veterans don't rally, they're still disorganized. And so the Swedish side decides to get more aggressive again, and both Ranger blocks get charge orders once again. On the left, the Rangers just charge straight into the Cossacks, who are now defending. And on the right, the Rangers charge the veterans, who are disorganized, but they don't quite make it in there with their first move, and so the mounted Cossacks are able to countercharge and contact them and basically intercept them, trying to screen their infantry. Combat is fought, and just with the numbers working out and the ordered, numerically superior Swedes, the Cossacks never had a chance. They take some hits and flee broken. The Rangers pursue and end up contacting those disorganized veterans, so the screening action did not work out for the Cossacks. The Swedes were able to break through and contact the infantry. And on the left side, in the first round of combat, the Rangers close in with the Molodzy, Register Molodzy, cause a bunch of hits, lose a base to their defense, however, but they still end up winning combat and pushing the Cossacks back. Second round of combat on the right side again. The veterans now easily rout the Rangers easily rout the veteran Cossacks because they were disorganized, outnumbered, and barely scored any hits. So that cavalry action was a complete success for the Swedes. And on the left side, the veterans pursue those disorganized Molodzy, score more hits, and also break them. However, the Cossacks are not done and can't be discounted that easily. On the right side, you may remember that those Raitiers were open up their flank towards the Molodzy, who now raked them, were flanking fire, close range, kill the base, and my Raitiers fail their panic test and withdraw into the building. And in their remaining fire, Cossacks keep shooting at the Swedes in Kobograd, but without much effect. And those Plastuni scouts now sneaking around, hiding behind their fence that's always there, shoot long-range shots into the cannon and take out the crew. So, yeah, Colonel Rappe should not be ignoring those scouts, even though there's just 2 bases. They can still shoot and do damage. And here's the end of turn 4. As you can see, the Cossack center is fleeing, and 1 Raitier unit is also fleeing. And Kobograd is still firmly in Swedish hands. Turn 5, the Raitiers rally and reposition. And Cossacks also rally 2 of their units. The veterans and the mounted Cossacks both get in position and get back into the fight. For their orders, the Swedes decide to keep their initiative. Their Raitiers are sweeping the Cossacks away, and those veterans, the Raitiers on the left, actually, the ones that got the charge order, now they're in a very bad position here because they have that case shot wagon just on their flank, so that would be devastating. So they need to get out of dodge fast, and so going forward and charging is actually one of the better places for them to go. So they move in to contact the fleeing Cossacks. And on the right side, the Plastuni just circle around just to keep the threat up on that side. and the Molotsi move up in their large formation, trying to get as close to Kobograd as they can. So a couple things happen in this slide. First, in Kobograd, the musketeers keep firing at those Cossacks that are standing around and end up taking out a base, causing a morale test, and breaking them. So they flee, and so at this point, the Cossacks have no units around Kobograd that can assault the city directly. And in the middle, the Raiters fight a round of combat with the fleeing Cossacks, cause some hits, they flee further, and then they pursue into those veterans, thinking themselves able to get a quick victory, but never discount the Cossack infantry. The veterans actually destroy a base, take a bunch of hits, but the Raiters lose, fail their morale test, and withdraw disorganized. So that cavalry action has now been stopped by the rock-hard Cossack veterans. And end of turn 5 looks like so. The Cossacks have re-established their center a little bit. My Raiters are now disorganized, and they did not get far enough away from that case shot. And Kobograd, however, is still completely under Swedish control. Turn 6, the Raiters do not rally, so they're still sitting there in the open, surrounded by Cossacks. And those fleeing registered Cossacks also don't rally, so they'll keep on going next to the wagons. But the larger formation of registered Cossacks does rally, so those 4 bases are back in the fight. So the Cossack center has been re-established completely. However, on the right, Colonel Rapid decides that that formation of Cossacks that still has a move order, not a defense order, needs to be pushed away from the city, so he orders his raiders for the one final charge. And the Cossack moves with the fleeing Molotsi pushing away from Kobograd. And the combat on the right side goes as it should have gone the first time, or as kind of as expected, with the Raiders causing a bunch of hits onto the moving Cossacks, pushing them back in the first round, following in the second, causing more hits and breaking them. And just before that, actually, in the defensive fire stage, the case shot from the wagon hits the Raiters, who were disorganized. They lose a base, they have to test, they fail their test, and they break and flee straight back into their own lines. And here's the town of Kobograd, end of turn 6, and it's fully in Swedish hands with all 3 buildings occupied, and Colonel Rappe occupying the town outskirts, looking around in victory. And Colonel Platov looking on to Kobograd, which is now beyond his reach, with his veterans supporting him in retreat. Here's the outcome. So the forces took losses like so, and the Swedes have full control of Kobograd for 6 points, and took acceptable losses for 1 more point, so that's 7. The Cossacks have no buildings in Kobograd for 0, took heavy losses for 0, and the total result is 7-0 for a Swedish strategic victory. So what does this mean for the big picture? Well, Colonel Rappe and Colonel Platov both pushed towards Kobograd. The Swedes beat the Cossacks to the punch and got to the city first, occupied it, and pushed the Cossacks back. And for the final divisional game, this is the starting situation. So the Tatars have complete control over the Pontar Hill on the right side. They'll be able to deploy significant forces there. The Swedes have complete control of Kobograd on the left side, and they'll also be able to deploy significant forces there. And the center is contested with a small Tatar advantage, giving them 5 points of reconnaissance for the divisional game. So the field is a little bit skewed, with Tatars pushing on the left, on the right side, and the Swedes pushing up on the left side. One more game to go. The divisional game is coming up, and we'll see how this titanic struggle of the 2 divisions ends up. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Bite Size Bat Reps.